Hi everybody, let's get started here. So we're very happy to end our semester series with another IEP alum, so Ryan Bigelow here, who it's his 6-year anniversary today at the aquarium, and we have just been told that he's moved up the ranks and he's the #2 in the Seafood Watch program, so that's pretty impressive for one of our own. So really psyched to have him here. His topic is the future of seafood sustainability, and in the minutes before we started, we're just talking about all the ways that I'm going to try to make it more controversial at the end by questioning the real sustainability of what's going on here. But we'll let him build us up to that point, and then we'll see where it goes. So let's give him a warm welcome.
Hello everyone. I'm going to do a different presentation than I normally do. I'm going to dive deeper than I normally go, and I'm going to cover more ground. So, these are the caveats. I'm jumping straight into it. 1, I'm not sure on the timing, so pull me in if I go too long. 2, if I talk about things you don't know, or if I'm spending too much time on things that others have already covered, let me know about that too. That's fine, jump at any point. And 3, if you have questions about seafood sustainability, if you think it's a crock like Jason does, we can talk about that too. I can take it. I'm happy to be wrong. So I'm also going to talk a lot more about myself than I normally do, just because 6 years ago I was right where you are. I had classes in this room. Probably my hardest class, one of my energy classes was right here. So I know exactly how you feel, and I know how hard it is to get jobs. So I'll talk a little bit about that. 8 years ago, I came to MIST directly from Japan. I was there for about 6 years. I was a translator. I found out about MIST because I thought I was going to go to that next level. But the next level for Japanese translation was car parts, and I had no interest. I was lucky enough to have been an interpreter during the Aichi World Expo, which was all environmental focused. It was a lot of greenwashing, but it got me more involved, and it was something I've been interested in. And I just told my wife, I want to quit this and follow my heart. So we took all of our savings, we came here, and I came to MIST. Because I knew about the school, and they were the only legitimate, prestigious grad school that said, oh, you speak Japanese, that's great, we'll give you some money for that. No one else was interested in that skill. And it was, so I was really excited to get in here. I had some great courses with scores and Michaels, and so it was great for me. We have I look at a lot of job applications now from really prestigious schools that don't put the focus on work that we did here, and getting out the door and getting a job, and it's a lot of times it's not going to hire them. So as you guys are looking at graduation, keep that in mind. You have a really good base behind you. So jumping back into this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the current state of seafood in general. We'll move pretty quickly through this. It's a huge topic. You can spend a whole semester on it, but I want to set the base. Then tell you a little bit about where the sustainable seafood movement started, where it is now, where I think it's going. Then working in sustainable seafood, what are the careers like, what are the skills that are most attractive right now, where are weaknesses, and we have a lot of them that can be easily filled by someone with the right skill set and drive. And then hopefully open it up for discussion. Jason's already going to take the task, and do that. I feel like I'm back in grad school all over again, we'll just switch positions. So I'm ready for it. So seafood, the most globally traded food commodity. It goes everywhere. The details of this map, what you're looking at here is roughly where different species go, where they start, where they go, and a general idea of the volumes involved. None of that really matters. I just wanted to show you some of the complexity that goes on there. $100 billion per year, I think that's low. I think it's more like $120, $130 billion per year. Product that's moving around. In the United States, we import 90% of the seafood we eat. So when we talk about how well managed U.S. fisheries are, that's absolutely true. We do a pretty good job here, but we've also outsourced a lot of the problems. So that's something to consider. And just keep in the back of your mind as we move forward. 50% of what we eat is farm and raised. So in the United States, my job is to speak to consumers. That's what I do. Any public outreach, interviews, NPR, all that stuff. That all goes through me. And all people want to hear about is wild-caught American seafood. I'm going to tell you right now, that's fine if you live in this bubble that we live in. Right? It's very wealthy, very affluent bubble of California. That might be a solution that works for you. And I very frequently hear this from my own parents, which is fine because they've reached a point in life where I guess that's possible for them. They're happy to eat salmon once a week, and that's enough. This is not a solution for the world. It will not feed us. And I hadn't planned this, but just to put a plug in for aquaculture, even if all the fisheries in the world were managed in what Seafood Watch considers a best choice, green, the best of the best, there's not enough wild seafood to feed us. It's not going to happen. Farmed seafood is a reality. It's not a panacea, and I won't put it forward as that, but if we're going to farm seafood, and it's going to happen, regardless of how you feel about it, it's going to happen, we need to do it well. So another thing we'll get into when we get into the science, but I just want to lay some of this out. And then maybe most importantly, seafood provides food and income to roughly 820 million people throughout the world. The vast majority of those are very, very poor. Many of them are illiterate. So when we talk about supporting sustainable seafood, even if you're talking about it as a dream someplace far off in the future, it is necessary to protect many of the communities that are most at risk for climate change, a variety of different issues. So it's really important, not so necessarily protected for us, because we can find other sources of protein that we have the money to do that, but for the wide swath of the world, it does not. So Seafood Watch as an organization, and we'll get into this as well too, focuses on the United States, North America, but seafood is a much, much bigger issue and problem. So this one's a little tough to see, and I apologize for that, but I think it tells a really interesting story of the economics of seafood. So let's start at North America. What you see here, there's many arrows, two main arrows. The first one, what we're producing and then consuming ourselves. The much smaller arrows you see flying off, those are what we're producing and exporting. And then the much larger arrow coming in from Asia to us, where we're importing our seafood from. So look at that, you get a general idea. Then underneath, you have how much we're producing. Asia producing more than 10 times what we do. Now look at the volumes, or I'm sorry, the values, the monetary values. America, a little bit less than Asia, but substantially less production, which means we're paying much more for the seafood we buy. So when you look at the sustainable seafood movement, which started in Europe with the MSC, which is the Marine Stewardship Council, and others, has slowly moved into the United States, hasn't really taken hold in other places yet, that we're working on that. It's because we have the buying power, because we're willing to pay more for our seafood. Because we'll walk in the grocery store and say, I don't want Chinese farmed tilapia, whether not that it's good or bad is something else we can discuss. I want the Alaskan salmon, I'm willing to pay the price for it. So you do see that we do export some things to Asia, which is because Japan is willing to pay even more. They will pay top dollar, well, the Chinese will pay top dollar for gooey duck. Has anyone ever seen a gooey duck or know what it is? Got one? Okay. Gooey duck is a very, call it what it is, it's a very phallic clam. It's about this long. It's very entertaining if you want to look up a picture of it. The Japanese will pay top dollar for sea urchin, uni. They'll also pay top dollar for something else we're going to get into, baby eels. They're very expensive. Baby eels are often, they compare their prices to different precious metals because that's how people do it. So we'll get into that as well. Europe, basically the same story, except they have a lot more of their own production. So this sort of tells you Africa not producing much, not much value. Kind of knocks out how you'd expect. This is growing more and more as they open up Patagonia to salmon farms. So any images you have of pristine Patagonia, you can let go, because there's quite a bit of farming going on down there. So, and Jason and I started to talk about this a little bit. You have, when you look at that graph, or those last two maps rather, it seems pretty straightforward. Yes, it's convoluted. Yes, there's seafood moving all over the world, but in reality, it's even worse. So this is what a basic supply chain might look like for different products. I don't know if you guys can read that, but you catch the fish at the top, and a commercial fishing vessel that might go directly to a processor. It might go into some sort of transshipment where it's shipped someplace else. Very convoluted, and it's also, let's take for example, the blue swimming crab fishery in Indonesia. There's maybe 100,000 boats in that fishery. So you see one there, and it doesn't look too bad. But remember, those numbers are substantially larger. Magnitude is larger. It's very, very complicated. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But what we're setting up is an incredibly valuable industry that is very, very complicated. It starts often at a level where people can't read. and don't often have cell phones, strangely enough. Even the slaves often have cell phones, which is a very interesting situation to be into, and we'll get to that a little bit as well. But they can't read in many cases, and they're dumping their product altogether. So even if you're fishing something and you're doing it sustainably, if I'm not, we go to the same producer and I'll dump it in the same bucket, you don't know what you're buying. And no one has figured out how to trace this yet. We're getting close. Again, a guy that I graduated with from here is doing some really cool DNA work, where he thinks he can track products that way. There are sprays that you can put on products. They're effectively a DNA barcode. So there's a lot of cool tech that's coming, but tech is never the solution. It can help, but there's always a human element as well, and we haven't quite done that yet. So very, very complicated system. So what happens when you have a very complicated system with poor traceability and a lot of money involved? One, obviously, and the reason organizations like Seafood Watch exist is because there's a lot of environmental degradation. Because there's so many blank areas, so many loopholes, so many places you can go where there's no eyes on you. There's a lot of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. The IUU fishing, you guys have probably heard of that. So illegal, exactly what it sounds like. You're fishing outside the scope of the law, of the management. Unreported is when you're catching fish but not telling anyone, even if you're legally allowed to do so. That hurts organizations like ours. Because if we write a report that says, go get Alaskan salmon, but because it's sustainable, from the reports that we're getting from the Alaskans, we don't know that the Russians are sneaking in, well, that would be illegal as well, but if they're not reporting that illegal fishing, then the numbers are actually lower than our scientists know. There's no way for our scientists to get up there and actually measure the entire biomass of the salmon in Alaska. So they're not reporting it. That's a serious issue for environmental groups. Unregulated really addresses the fact that there are places you can go where it's legal for you to fish, but no one is watching what you're doing. Chilean sea bass, Patagonian toothfish, is probably the poster child for a fishery that was just decimated by this. This is, in my opinion, one of the saddest areas because we have the ability to come together and collaborate around this and cooperate around rules, and we very frequently fail to do so. Another example of lack of collaboration, not among regulated fishing, that breaks my heart personally is bluefin tuna, where we just can't come together. We can't get the Japanese on board. I was just there last month speaking to the head of the Japanese Fisheries Association there, and they will not budge. They're very polite, but they will not budge, and it's frustrating to them. Another issue, and one that we're just now starting to be able to address, are human rights abuses. Just 2 or 3 months ago, an American flagged vessel in Hawaii was found with slaves on board. This isn't just Thailand. Thailand is probably the worst, and it's bad there, but this isn't a problem for the rest of the world. This is a problem for everyone. Why do we have slaves in fisheries? This part I'll spend a little bit of time on because I think it's heartbreaking and fascinating. You have traditional fishermen in, let's say, in Thailand, just as an example. They go out every day, they catch their fish, they come back, they feed their families, maybe they feed their community, maybe they make their money. They realize they can make quite a bit more money selling that fish to the United States. There's no infrastructure for that, there's no rules around that, there's no management for that. And so they just catch everything. And the more they catch, the farther away they have to go. They go further, they go further, and they go further until it costs you so much fuel to get out to where the fish are, you're not making any money at the end of the day. So you have a crew that you pay, but you can no longer afford to pay them, because there's nothing worth catching closer to that. So what do? You go to a neighboring country who you don't consider human, you tell them you have great jobs in construction, is usually the best one, or hotel maids for women. You bring them in, you throw them on a boat, and you never let them see land again. So you can be at sea for 6 years, a decade. These things happen. And then suicide, rape, murder, every sort of brutality is pretty commonplace out there. This is darker than I expected it to be. This wasn't even in my script, I promise.
Now I don't have to say anything.
Yeah. So then what happens is they start scraping the bottom of the ocean, catching those things that we can't eat, and selling them to shrimp farms who can only pay a small amount of money because we want cheap holiday shrimp. So there is a whole cycle there, right? So everything that's left on the bottom of the ocean after you've taken all the big fish out. So that's sort of that horrible story. I gotta think of a better way to end that. So I don't know that there is. Except, I will leave you with this. Thailand knows that this is a problem and they're addressing it. Not enough. Not there yet, but at least it's on their radar. Management confusion. This is even when you have best intentions, people don't know what to do. Bluefin tuna is not the best example because Japan is not at the table with the best of intentions, but it is one of those areas where we don't know what is best for the species. How do we best protect them? We often run into this problem. Fraud is an obvious one. You guys have seen the reports out of Oceana. Their office is right across the way from us, right down here at Heritage Harbor. You guys know where Heritage Harbor is? You know where the Fisherman's Wharf is? Mm-hmm. Right next to that, there's a collection of buildings that Prairie owns. Oceana's there, we're there, Audubon was there, NOAA's there. So it's this collective of ocean-related groups. I didn't know while I was here that there was such a hotbed of environmental activity, but it really is. So anyways, Oceana does all this fraud research. They do the DNA test. They go into the sushi restaurants and check the fish, and it's never what you think it is. So another big issue. And then one that I don't get nearly enough attention is how unresponsive the industry is. It's too convoluted. There's too much competitive nature. So when something like climate change arrives, and it has, if someone tells you it's coming, they're wrong, it's here. And you can see it, there's no better place to see it than in fisheries. I'll give you one example out of Japan, just because that's my sort of area of expertise. Japanese fisheries management is at a very small scale, down to like a local, what we call a village. And they catch these fish this time of the year. It's all independently done by these little areas. So if I catch fish X, but now fish X is 300 miles north because it's too warm where I am, they're catching them there in their nets, but they don't know what to do with it. They've literally never seen that fish before, and they've never had the rights to catch it. And so they'll throw it back, maybe it's alive, maybe it's dead, but they don't have rights to catch it. And the fishermen who are further down south, they get nothing. And in the end, Russians, because they're further north, which is happening quite a bit. So they're unresponsive to issues like that. So those are a lot of issues. So, a lot of darkness. I'm going to pull it back out and talk a little bit about the sustainable seafood movement and how we're rallying to try to address a lot of these issues. I'm going to take the Seafood Watch angle for a couple different reasons. One, I've been there. It's what I know best. I work with all these other groups and many others as well, but I'll stick to them. Also, Seafood Watch is very, I would say, representative of groups in the space, and we're also sort of the biggest fish in a small pond. So there's that as well. So, but again, all these groups are working on this. Greenpeace, behind the scenes, we work very closely with them, but they're the stick, so they can't be seen publicly with the carrot. But we're always talking. We work closely with them, and we're all collectively called the Conservation Alliance for Seafood Solutions. So, just very briefly about Seafood Watch, we started 16 years ago. We focused originally primarily on talking to consumers, getting just the average person to buy sustainable seafood, trying to get the message out there. We have since morphed and focused more now on businesses, which we'll get into a bit. But we've also focused very specifically on the science. All of our science is peer-reviewed, it's all transparent, it's all publicly available, and that was a very deliberate choice because 16 years ago, you were going up against fisheries, and that's a tough opponent, especially in the United States. We put our last hunter-gatherers on a very special pedestal. Many countries do that, it's not unusual, but you have to be very transparent and saying, no, we have no issues with fishermen in Maine, for example. This is just the science, nothing but the science, nothing but the facts. And so we've really toed that line, and because of that, our science is now the underpinning for most of the organizations you saw on that there, as well as organizations internationally. We have about 1,300 recommendations. So what goes into a recommendation? When I tell you don't buy bluefin tuna, what are we looking at? Just very briefly, we'll go into that. It's pretty straightforward, but behind that red recommendation that you might see on a pocket guide, of which I brought some and forgot to hand out, we'll do that later. We have this information. These are the 4 criteria we're looking at. 1, target species, how are you impacting that? The species you're trying to catch. So if it's bluefin tuna, they're at 2.5% of their historical biomass. So for every 100 tunas that used to be in the water, they're now 2.5. They'll start with half. What is the impact on that species? There is no impact on that species that in our opinion is sustainable. So that's a critical in our mind, but they would be marking that. When you're catching bluefin tuna, are you catching seabirds? Are you using long lines? Are you catching sharks? Are you drowning turtles? Are you doing those things? If you're not, okay. If you are, then you're going to get a red for your impact on other species. Management, I alluded to this earlier, but you could have the most pristine, healthy fishery in the world, and if you don't have a management plan in place, we will very quickly go tragedy of the commons and we'll take all the fish. It's just in our nature, it seems like. I'm sure you guys have heard that from all of your professors again and again. Without strong rules in place, we will destroy our resource. And then habitat and ecosystem, are you destroying corals? Are you dredging through blood that you shouldn't be and destroying larval fish, things like that. So on the fishery side, it's relatively straightforward. Don't worry, I won't do all of these. That's a lot. But on the farm side, it's a lot more complicated. So when we talk about farmed fish, it's an uphill battle. There's a lot of old tapes about what salmon farms look like. There was some really great fake news, before fake news was a thing, about tilapia farms and feeding poop to the fish. Tilapia will not eat poop unless you're starving them to death. And that doesn't make for a great product, so most people don't do that. But we're looking at a lot of different things. Just very quickly, chemical use is interesting because it's the one area where we sort of touch on human health. If they're using antibiotics that are important to human health, the prophylactic use of antibiotics, effectively putting antibiotics into the water so the fish don't get sick before they are sick, that's really dangerous. If you guys follow this at all, we're at a pretty dangerous point with antibiotics just in general, and so that's something they get marked down pretty heavily for. Is data actually available? For most countries, it's pretty easy to get fisheries information. It's almost all publicly available. With a little bit of digging, you can get further. For farms, that's not the case. So, for example, historically, our recommendation for Chinese tilapia was red because they wouldn't share their data with us, which is not surprisingly very common. When they gave it to us, we were able to give them a yellow score. Not the best fishery in the world, but trying to farm it, not terrible. The rest, I think, are pretty straightforward, except I think it's worth pointing out, we talked about eel, which is unagi, right? If you leave here with two things in mind, I'll give you three things if you can't be bothered to remember anything else, but I hope you can go a little bit further. Don't eat eel, don't eat bluefin, and don't eat shrimp if you don't know where it's from. Those would be the things. Where are they getting their babies? If it's salmon, they have salmon farms. They have hatcheries. And that's a very high score because we know where they're getting them. They're not impacting wild stocks. We don't know how to do what we call the full cycle with eel. And so that's why they're so very valuable. I'll go to a river in Maine or France where it's illegal to export them, but for some reason 60% of all their eel disappear every year. The answer is Japan. Here's where it's going. They catch the babies, which are tiny, 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 take them to Japan or other places in China, raise them up, fatten them up, and then sell them. That's why they're so valuable. So that would be a source of stock which we would consider critical because they're directly impacting a lot of stuff. So not going to go through all this either, so don't worry. But this is what it looks like for different countries. So if you're talking about farmed salmon, by country, what are the scores? So you can very quickly look, and this is where a scientist from another organization or a business person who wanted to improve, let's say, they are buying all of their all of their salmon from Chile. Reverse it. They've got some serious problems. If they want to partner with us, they have to do something about it. Let's say this is their only source. For whatever reason, they're tied into this source of business. What can they do? Well, they can go work with them on their chemical use, because Chile uses way too many chemicals. They can work with them on what they're dumping into the water. That's called an aquaculture improvement project. They don't appear as frequently as a fisheries improvement project, but they do exist. So you can do that. Or you could just go straight to Maine and get their product, which is a little bit better than the Canadian product. So that's how a professional in this space would use information like this. It's probably not the most fun in their day, but this level of information is pretty handy for most people. So I want to talk very briefly about another hard to read map, and I apologize. This is what our recommendations cover. It's a bit misleading, so I'm going to lead you through it. What you see, green, yellow, red, that aligns with our recommendations. It's green, we have a recommendation, we have green recommendations, etc. The gray means there's no recommendation for it. The blue means there's no recommendation now, but it's in progress. We're working on it. So you look at something like the United States, and you might think, he said they have coverage for 85% of the product consumed in the United States. That's true. Remember, 90% of that is imported. So this big bubble here of gray, the large swath there, the 35% of gray, that actually is because a vast chunk of what we produce in the United States is from Canada, and almost all of their products have gone for MSC Marine Stewardship Council certification. So we don't do that. We don't do that work again. If it's certified, we don't bother to write a report for it. We benchmark that certification and say, okay, that's at least a yellow. Not great, but it's passable. And so we don't do recommendations for that. There's a lot of people who disagree with that. I'm actually one of those people, but we all get our funding from the same group of funders, which is another important thing to know is if you look at careers in this field, is the funding is all very centralized. And most of it is private, which is another good thing to know as we move into a Trump administration. They don't want us to duplicate work, so that's another reason to do that. You look all the way over to Asia, you see that there's a vast swath of green, which feels good at first. Most of that, though, is seaweed or bivalves. It's almost impossible to go anything but green with seaweed and bivalves. They're pretty sustainable. You can actually make, from a CO2 footprint point of view, there's a pretty good report that should be coming out soon from the Brin School comparing bivalves to a vegan diet, and it does maybe a little bit better than vegan. But I'll let you guys wait to see the report. We haven't seen the final yet, but it's pretty interesting. So that's that. And then down here you see there's a big work in progress over here in South America. That's almost all salmon. They make a lot of salmon, grow a lot of salmon already. The areas where, and then Europe, same issue as us. They bought into MSC very early on, so most of their fisheries, and we saw earlier, they're eating almost all their own seafood. It's almost all MSC certified. So that's what you see there. So we take all those recommendations, we boil them down, and we turn them into much simpler recommendations for the general public. This is our app. Does anyone have the app? A couple of you? Okay, cool. I have prizes for those people who have the app. I should keep those out before them, but I forgot. We also have pocket guides. About just under 2 million people have downloaded the app. About 56 million people have gotten a pocket guide. So that's good news. More and more we're working with chefs. Any of you enjoy eating food or drinking wine? I'm sure you've been out and about. I was just in San Diego, and the guy who sold me my beer spoke for like 5 minutes about what kind of beer it was, which was really cool. I enjoyed it, but I didn't know really what he was talking about. And our hope is that we can get seafood to that same level. It speaks to the traceability component that we're going to come back to. Right now, people don't know what they're buying for the most part, and so they can't with confidence tell you. You go into a restaurant, you order beef. If you're into that kind of thing, grass-fed beef, they tell you the whole spiel. Your wine is from here and here. It was made in this kind of barrel. They tell you also that you get your fish and they say it's salmon. Really? Is it really? And it's one of our favorite things is to ask people where it's from, because they'll often tell us where their supplier is, not knowing that that's not where the fish is from. So, it's traceability issue. Chefs push businesses and other chefs. Chefs are held on a very high pedestal now for all the reasons which it's discussed. Food is hot right now, and probably a way it's never, well, at least in my memories, it's never been before. So, I went around the country with Nathan, and my television shows reached 10, 20 million people. Good, quick way to reach people. We know from lots of research that when we get up in front of the camera, no matter how cute we might be, it's not nearly as effective as one of these guys do. Now, I was called out on this. I was showing my staff this earlier. There are too many white dudes on this slide. We have 69 chefs, and this is just a screen grab. I apologize, there are more. But it's a serious problem we're running into. How do we get more minorities and more women into this group? Because they're very particular. There are a lot of women in these circles. They're underrepresented in this field. The only one that's, I think, worse, ironically, is aquarium vets. Aquarium and zoo vets is the least diverse job in the world. I just learned that, so I thought I'd share it. We have a big, it's a big push at the aquarium to get someone in who's clean. So, the next, since after we get all that information out to consumers, we start working with businesses. I put these up here because they're our biggest partners. They're the ones you'll probably recognize most quickly. You might not recognize Compass and Aramark. Does anyone know these guys? Oh, okay. That's better. That's good. Better than normal. They're some of the biggest food service providers in the United States. If you've eaten at a stadium, if you've eaten at a college, if you've eaten in a prison, you've had their food. Guaranteed. They have all those accounts. They have sustainable seafood commitments. Now, at this level, the quantities that you're talking about, when we say we partner with them, it's different than when I say I partner with Passion Fish. When I partner with Passion Fish, which you should all go to as a graduation present to yourself if you've never been, they are all green. They are all sustainable. They are going above and beyond our program. These guys move so much seafood that they can't always do that. We will still partner with them. It's the whole light bulbs at Walmart scenario, right? If I can change up the light bulbs at Walmart, I've done a huge amount of good, even though Walmart is kind of a, they're sort of a negative place overall, but you can do a lot of good by changing what they do. So if I can get Whole Foods to stop buying $500,000 or 500,000 pounds or tons or some ridiculous amount of shrimp that's not sustainable, that's good. It's not great, it's not the best, but it's good. And Whole Foods is actually one of our best partners. The other interesting thing right now is Blue Apron is now a partner of ours. Are you guys familiar with Blue Apron? They're into it. They're hardcore. They love this stuff. One of your New York people. They love it. And now all the other companies want to get on board too. So it's kind of interesting. I think you're going to see more and more home food items that are sustainable. So that's good. So that's one portion of our outreach to businesses. The other, as I alluded to, are restaurants. We have 300 of those or so, and they have to be all green anymore to be a partner. Between the chains, you have regional chains, grocery stores, a variety of different types of partners. There's about 100,000 locations that follow our science. Now that number includes organizations that aren't listed up here that you might think, like a Target or Safeway. They're not partners with us. They partner with other groups in the organization that use our science. So if you dig deep enough into the CSR statement of Safeway, eventually it says something about us. And they get all of our science for free, which is a bummer, but they leave. So that tells you a little bit about where the movement is. And before I jump into this, I just want to say the sustainable seafood movement has got a pretty good grasp right now on how to handle food when it's consumed in the global north. Now, there's traceability issues we're going to get to that make the methodology on paper that bring that into question about how effective it is. But if we had that traceability across all products as opposed to just a few, the model works. Does that make sense? How we do that in the global south is a whole other question, and one we haven't quite gotten to yet. We've also done a very good job of addressing environmental issues. And so people, planet, profits, right? The three pillars of sustainability. We've got, at least on paper, the planet part of it down. I don't mean to say we fixed it, but we know what the solution could look like. We've got the profit side down almost for the buyers in the West or the global North. We haven't talked about profits for people on the ground, and we haven't talked about people. So those are the other two components that I want to get into. The first thing I want to talk about, I was going to shoot right through because I didn't think anyone would be interested. It was this data-driven methodology. I didn't think anyone would be interested in it because it's, and I'll show you why. That's really complicated. And I swear my intention was to throw this slide up and say, but don't pay attention. It's not, that's a lot of detail. But apparently you guys are into this, so that's cool. So we are working right now with FOS, which is Foundations of Success, correct? Bullshit.
No, it's Foundation for Success. On the board.
And they've been doing really great work for us to try. Basically what you do is this. You start all the way over here and you say, I want to protect oceans. I want to see change in the water sometime. And then you go all the way back over here and you talk about what you're actually doing. So when I hand out a pocket guide, or when I get someone to download the app, what chain of events that you see up here happens that leads to change in the water. And if you're hoping to get a job when you leave here and you're able to say, I saved this fish, good luck. You're going to do something very hands-on that pays very poorly. Because those jobs are few and far between. They're field work, right? There's not a lot of those. So for us to say, for example, we have food security, human rights. These are really hard to read up here. A variety of goals, let's say change in the water, protecting species. We have no way of measuring out here. And what Foundations of Success and other people who use this model will tell you is that's okay. There are other groups doing this work as well. You need to see how far to the right towards your goals you can get and still prove that you're being effective, right? So there are other groups who are on the ground, so like a NOAA, these other institutions who are doing work over on this end. You have to just show how far out you can get and be successful. Now in a perfect world, you'd map it all the way out. But that's often very difficult to do. So in my world, I give out a hot guide, I hand it to you. Does she take it? Does she read it? Does she learn about sustainable seafood? Does that change her beliefs about sustainable seafood? So impacting someone's knowledge is easy. I can stand in front of you right now and tell you things, right? And you can absorb it or not as you desire or are capable. But then what does that do to how you feel, right? Probably in this room, you guys all gave up your evening, thank you very much, to come and listen to me give this very dry talk. So you probably already believe, right? The beliefs are probably out there. You're probably just looking for the knowledge to back those up. But does that lead to action, right? When you go to Crystal Fish, and I love Crystal Fish, are you going to turn down that delicious, delicious food? Right? And even if you do, is it just because you're a tree hugger at heart, and I am too, I mean no disrespect, or is it because of the information I gave you? Now, to the fish, it doesn't matter. But to me, and the money that people pay me in my organization, it very much matters. Right? You need to say there's a direct relation. Because if there's a better way, you need to find it immediately. So Seafood Watch is three things. It's science, it's outreach, which is what I do, talking to people, and science. Business is easy, for the most part. Not easy, but straightforward. Are you selling less fish that is not unsustainable? Are you actively engaging with the worst performers to improve them? What are you doing? Right? Whole Foods sold, I'm making this number up, don't quote me, sold 1 million tons less red listed seafood last year. That's great, that's a win, it's a check. We can draw that right back to it. That's an easy one. Science, how many reports have we written? We've covered 85% of all the seafood in the United States. That's great. Are the reports actually hitting on the science that matters? We can look at that too. That's all pretty straightforward. Difficult work, but straightforward. Outreach, talking to people, is a lot more difficult, right? Especially when, again, I speak to people like you, who already probably have a lot of this knowledge, maybe came here just because you have a specific question about a specific fishery, or already believe. So this kind of work is going to help my team, hopefully, dig into if we're doing the right things for the right reasons. Should I be working with chefs? Should I not? Question.
So just so I understand, you guys have hired Foundations of Success, this NGO, to help you develop a monitoring and evaluation system to know if the cards and everything else you do are actually working, and if so, how that works.
Yes. And we've gone beyond that. We've started a monitoring and evaluation group. It's still in the science team, but we're going to break it down. It's going to be its own thing. Mm-hmm. If there is a career in this for you. And I'm jumping around a little bit.
In what specifically?
If you can read these, if you can build these, if you can sit down, I've had 3 meetings. I had a meeting at 8 a.m. yesterday. They went for 3 hours. And someone sat with us and just kept saying, yeah, but ask yourself this question. Yeah, but. It felt very much like a counseling session. They're not giving you answers. It's brutal, and it's really important work. If you have that level of patience, if you can understand this, if you can make this work, if you can make this a career, there's a whole career out there for you.
Who could do one of these? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So there's work there. Yeah.
I have a question. Seafood Watch is a few years old, and the date here is, if I can read well, 2014. Did you have
2016?
So did you just do that, or did you have one before and that's a new version?
With Marathi?
Yes. This new like static.
Well, we've always been playing every year, but it's never been this model. And that's a very good question, because that's always been part of the problem, especially for me. People said, my goal for the last 3 years has been to reach 10 million people a year. I can do that with one video. Do I get to go home? Am I done? Like, What does it mean to reach someone? What do they do with the video? Do they play while they read about whatever their grandma was doing over Thanksgiving break? Like, it's too soft, and we need a backbone. And we're just now getting to it. And I think the reason that the whole movement has moved away from the consumer side, the business side, is because the business side, it's much easier to gauge your wins. And it's sexier. But if you know how to talk to people, if you know how to do these, there's a lot of work to be had. In the exact same vein, if you guys know tech, if you know databases, if you know how to interact with those kinds of things, and you know fish, or the littlest bit about the environment, which you better, graduation's in like 3 days. There's a huge hole in this movement for that kind of work. So people, I'm way ahead of myself, I'm going to get to some careers, but just flow-wise, I'm going to go with it, so stick with me. People who work in this industry almost all do it because they love it, right? You think you're going to take a pay cut, you think it's going to be this, it's going to be that, that's what we're told. And that can be true. There are organizations that are struggling to get by with people doing really good work, right? So that is a reality for some people. But there are also good jobs, and it also means that if you have a dual skill, if you have this degree in something else, then you can do a lot of really cool things. I speak Japanese, I was a translator, I talked about that. That's open. We don't even do work in Japan, or we didn't when I showed up. I've been in Japan for work 10 times in the last 6 years, right? I've met the first lady a couple of times, I've had dinner with her, I was just at the head of the fish. I'm not bragging, right? Like this is just, that's not my intent. My intent is to say, if you've got any kind of skill like that, if you can speak Chinese, go, come work for us tomorrow. We're hiring someone right now. I'm hiring a tech person right now, right? And they're good jobs. You know, if you're a tech in this field, like I'm hiring that guy for $94,000.
To do what?
Be a product manager for my team. So he'll be in charge of just running. We use your website. So he comes and talks to those of us who don't understand tech, and we say we need this, this, and this. And he goes and works with a contractor, and he puts together tech sheets, and they make it happen. I say he because our top candidate right now is a guy, not me. That's the guy. My current tech, who might also apply, we're not sure yet, is a woman. So this is the way the movement is going. We're being used as sort of a test case to see how effective this is, because we're dumping quite a bit of money into this. We'll probably get 3 positions out of this. It will be full-time and ongoing. That this just has to be maintained. Keep coming back. Keep checking success. Keep checking metrics. So if you can read Google Analytics, if you can do those kinds of things, there's a place for you in this movement. So, human rights. You guys have seen some of these stories? Yeah? You have a question?
All right, so a good part of this year there were some New York Times, Washington Post stories on, I think it was either Cambodians who were taken hostage, taken to Thailand, and held against their will.
Yes.
And they were just simply doing fishing, but it was also bycatch. I'm concerned about that. So at this point, where is your organization positioned in answering the human right violation?
I'm glad you asked. So we're going right now. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we, for the longest time, we don't have anyone on staff who's an expert on this. We have a lot of scientists, we've got a lot of PhDs, but they're all fisheries, aquaculture ones. Good people, but this is outside their expertise. So what do you do with this? What do you do, especially because unlike fisheries data, which sometimes is kind of hard to get, this is secret, right? This is a hidden world by design. It's much harder to get good, solid information. The pieces that you're talking about, the Vina series of articles, if you haven't read it in the New York Times, you should. It's heartbreaking, but it's powerful stuff. He was just here, he spoke. He got that information because he literally went out on boats and went out there, which I don't know how important he had the courage, but he did. So Seafood Watch has struggled with this because the writing's on the wall. We've changed the definition of what sustainability means within that Conservation Alliance that was up for just one slide, that group of NGOs, to include communities, human rights, etc. I'm being very careful not to say social issues, because social issues abound in this. So that's Do women make a fair wage? If you're a Cambodian in Thailand, can you get a job, a fair job, and be treated to a fair wage? The answer to those questions is no, right? And we don't have the ability to address those issues. Those things need to be addressed on the ground. They're critically important, but unfortunately they don't measure up against slavery, indentured servitude, murder, those kinds of things. So what have we decided to do? We have to address it. Our business partners want to address it. You saw a lot of those, a couple of those articles with Costco getting sued for selling shrimp farmed by slaves. Human rights abuses are never a good thing, right? But there is an opportunity here because businesses that didn't care about environmental sustainability do not want to be caught out selling slave-raised, caught products. Slavery does not carry connotations in the United States. So there's an opportunity to engage with companies that in the past weren't ready to come to the table. So what we've done is we've come together with these organizations, as well as a lot of smaller groups on the ground who are really the subject matter experts, and come up with what we call a social risk tool. It's not going to impact our recommendations, and it's not going to be something that the average consumer, which is not anyone in this room, it's not going to be something most people would ever use. Because what it's going to tell you is if you're buying this fish from this fishery, there is a low, medium, or high risk that you're buying a product that is associated with slavery or some other abuse. That's very useful for fishery, for a company. Imagine you're buying, $30 million of salmon a year or something like that. Those companies exist. Do I buy it from this fishery where it has the same environmental sustainability, or do I buy it from this one where there's this risk of us getting caught out for benefiting from slavery? So it allows them to do that calculus in their head. And that's really, really important to organizations. This will be up probably early next year, and we're going to slowly fill it in over time with information. I wish that there was a way to say this product is absolutely free of slavery, but it's really hard to do. No one has figured out how to do that. Even fair trade, I didn't know this, I just learned about this. We've worked with them in the past. Just because you're buying a fair trade product doesn't mean that there wasn't slavery and servitude involved. It means that they're working on fixing it. And remember, they're working on an individual farm basis. So it feels good to buy those products, and you're right to buy those products because you're supporting something, but it doesn't mean the slave didn't pick that cocoa bean and went into your chocolate bar. Right? I don't think slavery is ever an issue, but it's the same sort of thing. So this is where the movement is going. If you have an interest in human rights, if you spent time in Southeast Asia, and this is another area where it's fast growing, and there's just not a lot of experts because again, it's pulled in policy wonks, biologists, aquaculture guys. Those are the big ones. So if you're outside of that, there's space. All right. Seafood Watch focuses specifically on North America. That only makes sense when you're building up. Okay.
Maybe 10 minutes?
Okay. Yeah. That only makes sense because that's all we could handle at the time. But there are all these other orgs throughout the world. This is the Global Seafood Rating Alliance. We're pulling together other groups throughout the world to come together on one definition, one set of standards around sustainability. So you're going to see this more and more as well. So if you speak in the languages that are spoken in these countries, there's another opportunity for you to do a lot of good work. If you're interested in traveling, if you want to be out and about, there's a lot of good work here as well. All these groups are coming together. We pull them into Monterey every year. This is also just starting. It's very nascent work, but this is also the future of where we're going. It can't just be Europe anymore. It can't just be the United States anymore. We've got 5 to 10 years where we still control the market, and then it's all going to China, then maybe some to India. So if you want to be ahead of the curve, you've got to be working with everyone. China is not on here, but one of the groups we partner with has staff in China, so that looks like an obvious oversight. But yeah. The other thing we're working on is moving away from what I like to call colonial environmentalism. So that's when you guys are familiar with this concept, right? You show up on the shore and you're like, I'll show you how to save rhinos, right? I've read all about it. You can do this. And it doesn't take into account the fact that there are lifestyles that revolve around whatever practice was in place there, and that there people on the ground need to make money and they have families to support, right? Your plan to save the animals might be fine, but if it doesn't also support the community, which is something that I learned here, it's not going to work. And that's something that we've been guilty of, other organizations have been guilty of. So we're moving away from that. Traditionally, our relationship with fisheries governments has been adversarial, unless we give them a good recommendation, you know, then it's permitted. Let's close it up. And this actually hides the fact that that's a crab shed that I noticed just before. That's not true. Push that off the screen. But we've built up such a base that ASEAN, are you guys familiar with this? The Association of Southeast Asian Nations. They came to us and said, what do we have to do to get our shrimp farms out of the red and then the green and yellow? And so they came to us, we're working on this, the Southeast Asia Shrimp Improvement Protocol, which is a set of rules that we went and had them built. We went to them and said, these are our criteria, how do you want to get there? What's going to allow you to still be profitable? What's going to allow you to be in charge? You tell us what you need to do to reach these goals. And so it's still new. I'm not going to lie, it's not like that region of the world supplies something like 60 to 70% of our shrimp. And so any wins there are good wins. And I think this is another good model. So if you have a strong science background, if you have the ability again to speak in a foreign language, and you're comfortable operating, even more important than foreign language because so many people speak English now, if you have cultural fluency, that's key. So for example, when I was in Japan, it was a long time ago when I lived there, and almost no one spoke English, or they were too embarrassed to do so, or they were just way behind the curve. Now when I go there, everyone speaks English. I'm shocked every time. But there's still cultural fluency. There's still ins and outs that you have to know to not insult people. And that happened just very recently. We were there with the head of their fisheries organization, and they came, you know, some of your coworkers from X organization were here, and they were very, very rude. And we're done talking to them. Wow, well, there's several $100,000 down the drain for those guys. More job security for me. So if you have these in your back pocket, any languages is great. This is one example of how that work will look, how you move away from colonialism. The other thing we're doing, and I didn't talk about it as much here, is we're taking scientists and hiring them locally and paying half their salaries for them to work locally with local groups. So we train them up on our science, we bring them here, we introduce them to the seafood watch culture as it is around sustainability, and then they go home and they write the reports that only they can write. There's too many parts of the world where you're never going to get documents in English, right? And you need, again, that cultural, linguistic fluency to get through them. So that's another thing we're doing. Finally, and traceability, I don't have enough time to give this as much, but everything that we've said, every system I've outlined, every issue that I've talked about, from seafood fraud, slavery, to seafood sustainability, all comes back to this. And I think Jason's going to make the point that this does not exist. Just getting ahead of you here. But he's right. For the most part, it doesn't. Groups like MSC, where they actually track the product through, exist. They've got about, I'm going to guess here, 8% of world fisheries. And those are almost all whitefish. It's pretty easy to track, right? Just because it's just one big fishery and the boat comes back with many tons and you know exactly where it came from. And it's too expensive. It's very, very expensive. It's never going to work for one person in a dugout canoe. And that is the majority of where our fish come from. Those big industrial trawlers are bad, but they're not catching most of the fish. So that model's not going to work moving forward. We need a better model. So my hope is that, yes, this undermines. If I give you a pocket and you don't know what you're buying, and they don't know what you're selling you, then it is useless in the discussion, right? And that's what undermines seafood sustainability. However, we still have to build the model so that when this comes online, and it's going to come online, because people do want to know what they're buying. Companies want to know what they're buying. Even if you're feeling disheartened because of the recent election, and you don't believe in anything anymore, trust me that businesses want to know what they're buying. There's a reason that McDonald's went and got MSC certified for their filet fish. It's not because they care about the oceans, at least in my opinion, it's because Filet of fish has to taste exactly the same in 10 years, and that's not going to work if you're buying all of your product from Russian fish pirates. And that's what they're doing, right? Yes, piracy is a real thing that's big, especially big. So traceability, if you are into supply chains, man, well, don't work for an NGO, work for a company. But this is another really good place to be professional. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but the aquarium does some of the best, I think, some of the best policy work in the state. The bag ban we pushed, we broke the shark fin ban, it came out, what, 3 years ago now? 2 or 3 years ago? Very proud to be part of that. And I was traveling with the head of our policy department, Margaret Spring, in Japan when Trump was elected. She's from Washington, D.C., and has lived in that world. And you just, her face, she was just heartbroken. So she hadn't been so sad since Reagan. But there's, at least in our movement, there are rays of hope. One, most of the things we want, really strong, we want to know what you're selling us. We want you to keep America great. All those things, I know, there's a lot of optimism in this. All of those things sort of speak to his platform, right? For Trump to say, nope, you're not allowed to sell a product to us, China, unless you tell me exactly what it is. He's just giving them a logistics nightmare, and I can see how that might appeal. It's thin. I'm not going to say it's not thin. What's not as thin, though, is that our funding, and I mentioned this earlier, is almost all independent from the government. This movement, at least. However, this is up, right? It doesn't matter if we eat all the fish if the oceans are too hot for there to be fish. So, and that's outside of my expertise. I'm not going to talk about it. You guys can worry about that. Get drunk thinking about that later. But all of our funding is independent. We're really gathering at the state level. You're going to see a lot of change there. I think it's going to be, I'm hoping, a great time for California to lead. Remember, if we were a country, we'd have the 6th largest economy in the world. That's a lot of power, right? I think you're going to see that more and more, states just going on their own. So it's not all bad. Most of that, not all bad. So this is Taylor. I'm guessing he's about your guys' age. He's on our team, genius, aquaculture genius. This is him in Asia. We've talked about this a lot, and I know I'm running out of time. So if you guys have specific questions about our careers, I'll take them at the end. But beyond that, thank you very much for listening to us sort of just starting to speak.
Just two quick, you really touched on the real full range of the issues. I have two quick things you can give short answers. Sure. What do you think the probability is that some of these real human rights abuses are prevalent in some of the green or yellow listed species that you guys have certified? Low, medium, high?
I'm going to say low for the green. To get to that level of environmental sustainability usually requires a series, it requires a level of management and a level of oversight that doesn't usually allow for that. However, Hawaii slays in those boats. Most of the fisheries in Hawaii are yellow, so that's why I give that caveat. But I would say the two are linked. Maybe not directly, but there's definitely a correlation. The higher the sustainability, the less chance there is that there is.
Great. Yeah. Second quick question. I don't eat fish, but I carry the app so when I go out. And the one thing I've found, and maybe you can speak to this, I know you're going at the higher level now, the buyers, but we bring it up and we type something in, and there's so many caveats. Did it come from here? Did it come from there? That within really the majority of times we can't get the information. Yep. So we look and we say only this is green. Say is it this? And they go, well, I know it's this. Is it from here? We don't know, or they don't give the region. So I found that the guide breaks down very quickly, even if you're really well intentioned. I was just wondering if your comments on that.
Absolutely. Traceability. Because really, there's 3 questions. What is it really? It can't all be snapper, right? That's not all snapper. And other countries do that as well, by the way. They have one fish they really like, and they just start naming fishes out. Japan does it too. How was it caught, and where was it caught? It doesn't have to be that big a deal. I mean, again, going back to the wine example, which I think is, we're freaks for our wine and alcohol at this point, but all the information they give you is just 3 points, that's not a big deal. But it's not there, they don't know, because there's no traceability. It gets even worse. In the United States, if you take a product and you add value to it, so in the case of fish, that usually means you're cutting it up and breading it, you then mark where it was processed, not where it was caught. So you can buy wild Alaskan caught salmon from China. And that's
Wait.
Yeah.
A wild Alaskan, and you said Alaska, right?
Yeah. So they catch it in Alaska and they send it to China to be processed, and they have to market it with China.
Wait a minute. Are we doing this game where you have these 3 shells?
Is the shell game? Good question. No, not in this case. If they're not being intentionally, so you catch a sardine off the coast here. It's a pretty sustainable fishery, fluctuates up and down. But let's say you catch a sardine, you want to can it. That's how we like to eat our sardines, right? There's no canneries left in California. It has to be shipped to Southeast Asia, or they can it and send it back. So that's a California, well, probably American West Coast sardine from Vietnam. Because that's the way our laws work. So we need to change those. I said Trump. Obama is working on this now. He's got an initiative on IUU, which is specifically targeted at illegal, unreported, unrelated fishing. But the answer to that is traceability. We just need to know what we're buying. Once we know what we're buying, then we can have a conversation. It's just like anything, really. If you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't know what the problem is, you can't fix it. If you don't know where the fish is, I can't tell you anything about it. So the app does break down there, but as soon as we have traceability, as soon as that's a requirement, then that information becomes important. We talk a lot about the app and the Pocket Guide specifically because I take 1,500 recommendations and I boil it down to 75. You think the app's not useful, right? But how useful is it when you stand in front of a business and you're waving that around? Even if you're not getting the information you need on the card. And I think people are finding it hard to believe. I find it hard to believe. Businesses call me all the time and they say, why is my product not on your list? Or how do I get out of the red? And I'm sitting there going, they think that people are making their decisions based on it. And that's because people like you wave it around. So go in, even if you don't buy seafood, you're the perfect audience. You go, you don't have anything off this list? They say, no. I'll take the salad, I guess. The other thing I would say to the meat eaters, I only eat fish. I think I would eat, and that's partly because of my time in Japan, and partly because it's part of the job, I can't get out of it. Don't say, I can't decide about the fish, so I will get chicken. Right? I can't say this across the board, but terrestrial meat sources, for the most part, are much worse than their marine counterparts. So if I don't eat these products, but the math doesn't add up, right? If you're concerned about climate change and other things, the math doesn't add up. The problem is that we run into is there's no beef watch for us to compare ourselves to, right? What we really need is a protein watch. And they tell you things like, yeah, you probably don't want to eat that tofu from that soybean because, they cut down half the animals how to do it, or whatever it is, right? I made that up, but you follow. Same thing with fish, same thing with all your beef products, or whatever it may be. And you see, for example, none of us would ever goat again, because it's the CO2 footprint is off the chart. That kind of stuff.
All right, let's open it up for another question.
So from the little bit of research that I've done on this, it seems that seafood being imported into the United States is kind of being tracked by a multitude of different agencies, like Border and Customs and USDA, and there seems to be kind of a lack of coordination between these groups, maybe enforceability of the several laws that are also dealing with that. Do you think that there's a policy fix to this, or are we just waiting for the technology to come out?
No, it's got to be a policy. It's never just one thing, right? It's definitely, Obama's IOU work was going to focus on all species, and then we were hoping it was going to do this panacea. It's going to focus on a couple key species, but that's the kind of thing, yes, absolutely. It's going to need to be at the policy level. It's going to need to be businesses at the table. They already are. American fisheries are, for the most part, at the table, except for the parts of the East Coast, because they refuse to admit they destroyed the cod fishery. It's been 20 years, they're not coming back, right? So yes, it's a multifaceted thing, and obviously collaboration between the different departments is going to be important. Just checking the emissions coming in is going to be important. Yeah?
We just had to turn in an assignment for one of our classes here. It's about imposter fish. And so I was just wondering, if you target one key species, you target the supply chain and they have to make changes all along the supply chain, do you think that could spill over into others, the procurement practices for other species as well? Or they'll just fix it for one species and hope, or just continue with the other species the same way?
It depends. I thought you were going in a different direction about that question. That's a good question. I want to very much. Yeah, I mean, if Whole Foods says we buy bajillion tons of seafood every year, you're going, or Walmart even better, or Target, you're going to do these things when you sell seafood, then if Walmart doesn't want 2 different systems or 20 different systems. Remember, there's what, 7 or so species.
So they'll scale it for everything.
Yeah, they'll have to. But the industries will be slower to respond in some cases, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll have to find one solution. There's too many species. I think we have recommendations for 100 species of rockfish, right? I can probably name more sharks than I can terrestrial protein sources. Like, there's just so many fish that you can't have a variety of different systems. But when you get, they're going to have the same requirements maybe, but when you get into the weeds and what they're doing on the ground, it's going to be very, very different. And that's going to be inspired as much by the species in question as the culture that's catching it, the materials they're using, the economic status of that country. That's not the word, but sort of where they're at in their development. Yeah.
I was wondering, is Seafood Watch concerned with the sustainability of fisheries destined primarily for non-human consumption? I'm thinking like pet food. Also,
yes.
The fact that around 20% of all fish landed globally is turned into fish meal for aquaculture and for feeding other livestock and other animals.
The answer is yes, both directly and indirectly. We've partnered with Mars Pet Care, who makes Purina, so cat food. We're working with them on their sourcing. We have 190 zoo and brand partners that have gate number of people come in, about 100 million a year. So 1 in 3 Americans goes through those doors every day. We give them our program free of charge, and they run with it. So we let them put their logo on our pot guide, the whole deal. And so they also are feeding sea lions and dolphins and exhibits. We don't do that, but others who do programs do. And so we absolutely have reports for those, the cavelins of the world that we aren't really eating much anymore, the stinky fish, right? So yes, and the other way we look at it is when we look at the feed component on bottom left, what are they feeding there? So that's a big component. So absolutely, it's a really good question. Yeah. You.
It's a long question, but
Yeah.
I think I'll try. Are there any unintended consequences that resulted from Seafood Watch? And one that I'm thinking about is, is there any chance that Seafood Watch in some way might be driving seafood fraud? A business call you up and say, oh, my fish is not on that list, and so you rename it because you know that's what people are going to buy. And then the second part of the question is like, if someone is buying, not sure what he's buying, but he's buying the fish that's on the list, the mission of the aquarium is like to inspire ocean conservation. So it's like it's the intention that counts, and like if they make that decision many times, don't get it right a few times. So it doesn't really matter in your stroke because there's only so much that falls under your control.
That's a really good question. I mean, the fraud, yes, absolutely, right? Both intentional and unintentional. When you call your supplier, yeah, I'm a Seafood Watch partner, and they go, oh, man. Like, yeah, we've got Alaskan caught salmon. We'll send it right to you. I mean, it's not, right? If that happens, so that's that we're kind of part of that. And you got businesses that are like, oh, I've still got to sell shrimp, but I want it in my window. And frankly, I've been in apartment restaurants where it's like, no, you're not selling me sustainable squid at this price. Sorry, that's not real. So what happens? I like to think when you actually get down and talk to these people that it's often about ignorance or mistakes more than intention, but yeah, it does happen. As to the aquarium's mission, one of the reasons that Seafood Watch got off the ground was because here in Monterey, it's easy to have conversations about fisheries. We saw one collapse out from underneath us. We saw it rebound, not the fishery, but the ocean itself, the ecology. So it's an easy story to tell here, but how do you tell it to my mom who's from Ohio, right? How do you tell it to my cousins in Dakota? They don't know. But we all eat, well, we all know people who eat fish. So there's that connection. And so in that sense, and I don't know if I'm quite getting to your question, but I think that's how we tie it into that inspiring conservation of the ocean. To know that if you're choosing to eat a creature, there are costs associated with it, and you should do it in as sustainable method as possible. Is that close to it? Okay.
So you're saying a problem with seafood is there's so many species of fish that we like to eat. But it seems like you have your higher trophic level fish, which we really enjoy, like tuna. Are there lower trophic levels that you could possibly, that the program is pushing towards, that are maybe more viable as a sustainable aquaculture?
Yep, absolutely. I would push back a little bit. The problem isn't that we eat a lot of different types of fish. The problem is that we catch a lot of different types of fish, and it's complicated. We eat 5. The salmon, shrimps, tunas, the whitefishes of the world. I'm forgetting one, but there's another. That's all we eat. And so one really good, it's not a solution, but one thing that would really help is, hey, eat something different. You talk about trophic levels. We love to eat salmon, we love to eat tuna, we love to eat carnivores. We don't farm tigers. Well, there's a reason, right? It wouldn't be sustainable. Though farm cows and that's not sustainable, but whatever, right? So eat more tilapia. They'll eat anything. Tilapia, except for poop. It's not true. They need very little fish meal. As a friend of mine said, he tells a story. He's one of our scientists now on our business team, was working on a tilapia farm in Israel. They would pull him out of the tank, dump him into the back of a pickup, drive 10 minutes to the market, and throw him into the tank live, and sell them as live tilapia. So just swimming around. They're tougher to kill than air rays. And so that kind of stuff, that traditional farming, can be done very efficiently, right? Like, you think of all the sort of the Chinese, like, I've got a little pond in my yard with a bunch of fish in it. That's very sustainable. We don't want to eat those things.
So can sustainable fish undergo the rebranding magic that the toothfish had?
I hope so. I think sustainability is already a selling point, but most people don't know what it means. Most people think it means healthy, and it doesn't. So for one of the most sustainable fish you can buy is a harpoon caught swordfish. You're never going to catch anything else. You're going to catch one at a time. You're probably going to catch one that's big enough for you to see, so you're not catching a baby. Everything's lined up, and they're loaded with mercury. Right? Loaded with mercury. Dirty as can be. It's super sustainable. So, yeah, those two things don't go together, but most of the things do. Okay, yes?
You mentioned Russia a few times, so I'm just wondering if there are any partnerships or lines of communication with them to solve the problems that are going on?
Yeah, we work with a group called O2, and they do a lot of salmon work, especially out of Kamchatka. There's a lot of work there, though it didn't go well, and there's a strong organized crime element there, and so the work's very dangerous. So there's a tendency for they'll close down the fishery and pull all the salmon out, put a net and catch them all, gut them, take the roe, and leave several tons of salmon there to rot. But they do it in ski masks with automatic weapons, so people like me are like, enjoy, but I don't want an automatic weapon. So, if that's right, I'm way over time, and I want to be conscious.
No, for questions, it's okay.
Okay.
Do any of these standards, whether more or less sustainable, or the other ones you showed, resolve to differences in taste? And how often when you meet with people, because you talked about McDonald's, their driving concern is having consistent flavor. When you talk about wine, the differences in origin are supposed to result from in significant differences in flavor and product. But to the people I would talk to about seafood, if the salmon tastes the same, whether or not it came from a fishery or from slave labor or from the most sustainable way possible.
Right.
It's not resulting in a difference in the meal. I think you talk about chefs, that's another audience who I think really cares about the
They
flavor.
do. They do, and they'll see straight through a farm salmon. And not always, but well, so there's a very common issue with farm salmon where you get this very particular bacteria. It's completely, it's not harmful anyway, it's fine, but it gives farm salmon that dirt taste. You ever get farm salmon? I need you to sit over there so I can look at somebody who's on the same page. You get that farm salmon, it's like, it's just not right. Or catfish, if you guys ever eat catfish? Muddy, that muddy, dirty flavor. That's from a very specific bacteria, and there's a way to address that with proper farming techniques, but it's tough. They're doing really cool things about that now. So in the past, when they would do catfish, for example, they pull them all up all at once, right? And then if that bacteria was present, you're screwed. All your food, all your catfish tastes like dirt or mud, that muddy flavor. But they know what it is now, so now what they do is they catch one, they pull it out. We've got a guy, there's people like this all over the world. I've seen them in Japan as well. They'll take a piece of raw fish, they'll rub it on their fingers, they'll taste it, and they'll be like, nope, not yet, give it a week. And they'll wait for that balloon to die down, they'll wait for it to get out of the system, and they'll harvest. In Japan, they do it with tuna. They pull a chunk off of it when you're in the fish market, they pull a chunk of the tuna off, and the meat, the fat, texture, etc. They know everything about it just from that. Just like any sort of connoisseur in there, which is a little off topic, but
No,
yes.
that's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
like, so I would imagine like antibiotics could, or.
I don't know about the effect of antibiotics on flavor.
Okay. And this would also seem to, if you had like a master fish taster, he could be the
Yeah.
tracking expert and say like, oh yeah, you know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the problem is that it's not always going to be that, right? Because right now, what do we all love? We love bluefin tuna. Which bluefin tuna was historically trash fish in Japan.
Used for pet food.
Yeah. It was trash fish. They'd soak it in anything they could to get rid of that horrible meaty flavor. So Japan is the problem with bluefin tuna. Don't think they're not. But they love it now. They taste like meat, and we taught them how to taste meat. We also push them back in the way. I'm a bit of a Japanophile. I'm not trying to defend them, but I think we always have to remember how these things happen. That history is important, even if they're still bad guys. Sorry, off my soapbox. Yes.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the impact of your partnerships with these big companies and what sort of impact you're seeing down the line. Is it the suppliers? Have suppliers changing their behaviors at all through your partnerships with the names you showed?
So yeah, one thing I didn't talk about at all is we do partner with suppliers.
Okay.
And we partner with them, we call them collaborators, not partners, because all we need them to do is agree to tell us what they're selling us. Within the bounds, so that's not addressing the traceability, that's issue. It's, is it red, is it yellow, is it green? You can still sell those products, but no, you're not going to stop selling shrimp. If you try to make it, you can stop talking to us. But if I send a business partner to you, and they can look at your menu of options, and this can be thousands of SKUs, these are the little numbers they put on these things, right? Which ones are green? Which ones are red? Which ones are yellow? And it makes their job so much easier. So we do partner with those people. And yes, so when Walmart, when Target, sorry, let me choose a different example, I'll use it. Safeway sells a reasonably priced canned tuna that is sustainable. What does that do to the tuna market? Right? What does that do when they send that message that we want to buy this product? A lot more than probably Whole Foods does. And not just because of, I mean, Whole Foods is a brand itself. They do great work, I don't mean to disparage them, but Safeway's a different situation.
One more question?
Anything else? I hope I haven't destroyed this movement for you guys. There's a lot of hope, there's a lot of work to be done. So
yeah, it was perfect. We don't have jobs left, right?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.